first off, welcome to day two. I'm super, I don't know if you guys can see my cat is like literally sitting in front of the computer. Welcome to my life. Um, so welcome to day two. Number one, I'm super excited because I'm seeing that feed start to fill up with people checking things off and getting things done and interacting. And that's always super fun for me to be able to see. I wanted to share my screen really quick because we already have, and I don't know if you guys have figured out how to see this. If you haven't, let me know how to find us in your challenges. We've already got some people pulling away from the pack. It's kind of exciting. So once you're in this screen, if you go to the right-hand side, you'll see these different levels. So like this is base camp and then, or yeah, start, and then this is base one, base two, base three, right? Look, it's gonna go up. And if you look at base one, we already have some ladies that are pulling ahead and getting things done. So congratulations to all of you ladies. You'll see where you're at here. So even if you go down to the start, like you'll see where everybody's at in terms of like how well they're doing. So if you're very competitive and you like to see like how you're doing in terms of where everybody is at, that's where you can find that. Okay, so today I wanted to dive into a little bit more about nutrition. Like if you notice, the challenge was not about counting calories, right? I didn't give you macros, I didn't give you calorie targets, I didn't do any of that stuff. What I want you to start to learn is it's about the metabolism and how it works. So today, the other thing you'll discover if you get around me a lot enough, you'll realize that I don't focus on all the little nitty gritty things, right? So like for a long time, I got on a ketchup kick and I would put stuff on social media and I'm like, I promise you it's not the sugar and ketchup that's the problem. Like stop focusing on it. Nobody cares. It has zero effect on your metabolism. What we care about are things that have a big effect on your hunger, your cravings, your insulin. Those are the things that we want to focus on. Put your energy into those things. And once you get those things into place, then you can kind of fine tune stuff. So today I want to walk you through the three things that matter most when it comes to your nutrition. So let me go over here, and then I'll try and keep an eye on this too. Okay. All right. So the nutrition big three. These are the three things that are going to have the biggest impact on your hunger, energy, cravings, blood sugar. So these are the things that we want to focus on. Now, they're not part of the challenge, or at least they can be if you want to fine tune things and start to make decisions based off of that. But we're going to get into meal frequency as well, just a little bit. So the big three. The first one is actually water that falls underneath nutrition. And here is why. Water is required for every cell in your body. Your body absolutely cannot survive without it, right? So you need enough water to hydrate and keep those cells functioning. Water also keeps hunger and craving cues at bay. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, people talk about it on social, is that if you ever have like start to feel hungry, drink some water first and see if that actually subsides the hunger cues, because your brain is so smart that it figures out like, okay, if she's not going to give me enough water, I'm just going to pull it from food. So it will release hunger hormones to get you to eat food so it can pull water from it. Right. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough water, because it is going to help with hunger and cravings. Now, here's the thing that most people don't know. And if you've ever decided to like drink a gallon of water a day, or like really up your water, and all of a sudden you're just like, I literally am running to the bathroom every 5 minutes. Why? Because your body needs electrolytes to pull that water into the cell. Electrolytes pull the water into the cell. And if you don't have enough electrolytes in your body, the water is going to run right through. So you need enough electrolytes. Now, there's different ways that you can do this. I know everybody's going to be like, okay, what do I get, right? So here's what I would recommend. You have a couple of options. You can get little packets of electrolytes from anywhere. I would say here in the States, the only one that I've seen that I really am not a big fan of is Liquid IV. It does have a little bit more sugar that I think is necessary for an electrolyte. But if it's what you like, then cool, whatever. But it's going to have sodium, potassium, magnesium, all those things in that are going to pull that water in. You can get little individual packs. I buy it off of Amazon. There's a company, a woman owned company True supplements. It's TRU supplements. I actually get their BCAAs. Side note, I think she has electrolytes as well. If you just plug in electrolytes, you're going to see lots of options. You're looking for something that you like that has electrolytes in it that does not have a ton of sugar. Now, if you like more of a natural approach, another way that you can do this is coconut water with a little bit of salt. You can just sprinkle a little bit of salt in there with a little bit of lemon juice. Does well too. And you'll know if you're getting enough if when you drink your water, it doesn't just run through it, like you stay hydrated. You can also do kind of the pinch test, right? Where it's like if you pinch your skin and it like stays like that, you know you're dehydrated. And if you're like, I'm drinking so much water, it's because it's not absorbing it. Let me grab this chat. Does that mean you think we should all do electrolytes in our diet? I recommend that most people probably need them. Most people are going to need them, especially if you live in a dry climate. And also, you're welcome. And also if you work out and you're sweating, right? Like you're sweating all those electrolytes out, then I would absolutely add them back in. I would say, I'm trying to think. I have a lot of clients, but I don't think there's anybody who isn't on electrolytes and gets the difference. Like they can tell like once they start or if they skip them, they're just like, oh my gosh. It will help with energy levels too, because when you get enough hydration in the cells, you will have more energy. You'll feel better, right? So how much water, not how many electrolytes, how much water is good. No, not everybody needs a gallon of water. You don't, what we want is what your body needs, right? So a good rule of thumb that you can start with is half your body weight in ounces. And then you're going to adjust from there based on the environment. Again, if you're in a drier climate or like I used to live in Arizona, I used to drink a lot more water. Or if you work out and you're sweating quite a bit, then you would add more in liters. I'd have to convert that kilos, ounces to kilos. I would go convert, Francesca, I would convert your body weight to kilos and then ounces to liters. And you can Google that. We can put it in the chat too, because you're not the only one. So that's going to be your water. Now, here's the thing. What I recommend is don't dilly-dally with like little cups of water. You're not going to remember how much you drank. I always recommend just get one of these big jugs. I fill it up first thing in the morning. This is the second one. Actually, it might even be third. I don't know. I've already had at least 1/2 of these, and it's 11 o'clock, right? So like it's just that way you're going to get the water in. I will say you don't want to slam a lot of water with your food because it will wash away all of the digestive enzymes you need to break down food. So sip water during meals and then drink more of it in between. So that's going to be water. That's the first one. Do we add electrolytes just once daily? I would start once daily, Alicia, and then see how you do. Most people do just fine with that. I do it once daily, but I will say if like I'm going to go on a hike or I do something where I'm super sweaty, then I'll add them in. I'll add more in later in the day. Good question. Good questions. All right, so that's your first of the big three. Second of the big three is protein. I know you guys hear it. It's all over social media nowadays. Here is why it's so important. Protein, getting adequate protein is going to help preserve muscle at the very least. When you're in midlife, it does become more challenging to add muscle because your body wants to just eat it all up, right? You start to lose it. But at the very least, we want to preserve the muscle that you have. When you go into any kind of weight loss, your body is not going to distinguish between fat and muscle. It's either anabolic or catabolic. It's either building or it's burning, right? So if it's burning, it's going to burn whatever's available, and that can mean that you lose even more muscle. Protein is going to help preserve that muscle as you go through weight loss. Now, protein is harder to digest, which is why I don't recommend that you jump your protein up really quickly, or you're going to be real constipated. Protein is harder to digest, but that is a good thing when it comes to your metabolism because it requires your digestive system to go to work. And when your digestive system has to go to work, your metabolism goes up. I put eat here. It's called, I don't know why I put eat there. That's exercise, activity, thermogenesis. That's not what that is. It is food. It's the nutritional thermogenesis of food. I don't know. It's TEF. I don't know why I put eat in there. I was tired yesterday. So it will increase your metabolism. Okay, so I'll give you some targets, but don't jump them up. The other thing that protein helps with is it's going to help with blood sugar regulation. So remember, we talked about hormones and balancing those out. Two of those hormones are going to be insulin and cortisol. When you eat, depending upon how much food you have and what kind of food you eat, you're going to have glucose in the system, right? And so then insulin gets released and it should help shuttle that glucose into the cell to be used, right? But what can happen is, depending upon how much you eat and what you eat, that blood sugar can spike. And anytime you get a big spike, you're going to get a big dip. Protein is going to slow the uptick of blood sugar. So even when I want, let's say I get up, and I don't do it very often, but I'm like, I just really want a donut, right? Sometimes I'll have a donut, but I always get my protein in first, because protein is going to slow the uptick of that sugar. Always eat your protein first. Get the protein in first. It's going to help keep that blood sugar from spiking. And then the big one is protein is the ultimate hunger killer. It is, I missed one too. Protein is the nutrient that will not get stored as fat. Your body will not store protein as fat. So you can eat a lot of it. And it is the ultimate hunger killer. It is the most satiating nutrient. Sometimes people think it's fat. Fat is not as satiating as protein. When you get enough protein, it's way easier to be in a deficit. And what I love about protein also is that protein, when you get used to doing it, is the thing that's going to help you learn how to be around forbidden foods, foods that you feel like are dangerous or you have no control over. You learn when you get enough protein and you're already satiated, you can take a bite of the cupcake. You can take a couple bites of the donut. You can go to dinner and have a couple bites of dessert and be fine because you're already satiated. So you want to get enough protein. How much? That is a lot of protein. Per meal, probably, we would have to take a look at it, Francesca. I'll have to look at your numbers. But yes, the average female does not even, I can tell you just from the women that come to me, even the ones that think that they eat a decent amount of protein, usually they have a hard time even just hitting 100 grams. So let's say if your goal weight is to weigh 150 pounds, then that would be 150 grams of protein. And just to give you kind of a perspective that probably you haven't thought of, like I eat 180 grams of protein per day. It is doable and it does make a difference. That's not what you need to eat right now, but it is something to start paying attention to. And I can tell you, it's not going to come from like beans. It's not going to come from peanut butter. It's not going to come from having an egg. Like if you're doing it 5 to 6 grams at a time, you're going to struggle. You need, like you said, big chunks of it, big amounts of anywhere from 25 to 35 grams per meal throughout the day to be able to hit those goals. It's hard when you don't eat meat. It is hard. I do have a couple of vegetarian clients and they struggle with it. We have to adjust it just a little bit. We focus a little bit more on fiber. We adjust their fiber and their protein a little bit. I also live with a pescatarian who struggles getting enough protein even though he eats fish. So I get it. It does become more challenging. And that's where you're going to make those adjustments, right? Where it's like, okay, like I know I need to get enough protein, but also I don't eat animals. I don't eat meat, right? So how do I do that? We would have to adjust your numbers just a little bit. So just keep that in mind. That's the customization part. Okay, so that's protein. That's the second of the 3. You had 120. Good job. That's pretty good. Okay, so the third of the big 3 is fiber. And here's why this is important. Fiber is going to help rid the body of toxins through proper digestion. I cannot tell you the number of women who come to me when I'm like, hey, do you go to the bathroom every day? And they're like, no. maybe 3-4 days a week, I'm like, that's problematic because all of that stuff is just sitting in your gut, right? We need to get rid of the toxins. And I put estrogen here because most women don't realize this, is that your hormones have to get metabolized and the excess needs to be excreted out. Estrogen is needed by your body. Estrogen protects your heart. Estrogen helps protect your brain. She helps protect all of your uterus, right? Like she gives you vibrancy. She's an important hormone. We don't need to be afraid of her, but we need the excess that doesn't get metabolized out. That's the difference, right? So fiber is going to help get that excess toxins out of your gut. Fiber is also going to help with visceral fat. So there's two different types of fat. There's visceral fat, which is the fat that's deep inside that surrounds your organs and causes heart disease, diabetes, all of those things, right? That's visceral fat. And then you've got subcutaneous fat, which is the fat that you can pinch. It's the gushy stuff that's like right underneath the skin. Typically, when you're looking at subcutaneous fat, the squishy stuff right underneath the skin, right? That is going to respond a little bit better to calories and exercise. Visceral fat has more to do with hormones and nutrition. So we want to help get the toxins out and help with visceral fat by getting enough fiber. Fiber is also going to help with blood sugar regulation, and great with combining it with protein. It's going to slow that uptick of blood sugar, right? So we get enough fiber. It also is going to fill your tummy, so it's very satiating. When you combine protein and fiber, you're just going to be very satiated. Good rule of thumb, 25 to 35 grams a day. If you're not getting that now, again, slowly uptick it. If you're looking at if you actually started logging and you're doing a really good job of logging and you're like, wow, I'm getting like 10 grams of fiber a day, right? Then get to 15, then get to 20. Don't jump it. And then just make sure, if you look, it's kind of funny. I like going on Google and going, there's soluble and then there's insoluble fiber. You want a combination of both. And if you look and you Google like sources of insoluble fiber, it will give you a list, and you go sources of soluble fiber. It's kind of the same list. Most things do have a good combination, but a good way to get both is to focus both on grains and fruits and vegetables. And I see this a lot when women go low carb. They like get rid of all their grains, right? And then all of a sudden they're not hitting their fiber goals and it causes a problem. Carbs are not bad, by the way. We want moderate carbs to support whatever it is we're doing. We don't need to eliminate them. All right, so those are your big three: water, protein, and fiber. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Now, let's talk about some flex tracking options. Again, and I mentioned this yesterday, is I do highly recommend that you invest some time and effort into logging your food, at least for a period of time, so you actually learn what it is that you're eating. But there are some flex tracking options, and I use these with my clients all the time. One of them is where you're just tracking calories and protein. So when we set targets, I do this quite a bit actually, where I'll give them, more often than not, I'll give them a caloric target and a protein target, but then I allow for fluctuations in carbs and fat. And the reason that I do this, and it says you can toggle based on activity, is that when you are lifting weights, when you're doing a little bit more cardio and your body needs that energy, we can up the carbs a little bit. When you're just focusing on walking and your body doesn't need that energy source anymore, you can lower the carbs down a little bit and you can increase the fat. And what I like about this approach also is that it's going to allow for more room for satisfaction, right? So if you are someone who's just always doing a little bit higher carb and lower fat, number one, you're going to find that you're just not as satiated, right? Where you're just like, I feel like I'm just eating all the time. The fat protein combination is really satiating, kind of fills in your tummy, makes you feel full. And that way you're not eliminating food groups, right? Like I can tell you on my higher carb days where I drop my fat down a little bit, I have to be very discerning where I'm getting my fat. I'll do egg whites because I have fat in my chicken sausage or something like that, right? So I'll do that. But on my days where I'm just focusing on the walk, I have the whole egg. I add more avocado, like, I add that. So you can toggle it based on your activity. It will also help your metabolism become more flexible. We want a metabolism that's flexible so that when you throw stuff at it, it's like, okay, I got it. And it just starts to adapt. Okay. So that's one way that you can do it, is just simply through doing calories and protein and then letting your carbs and fat kind of fluctuate. And FYI, there have been numerous research studies in the last probably 5-6 years that will tell you that there is no advantage to having either high carb or higher fat, or lower carb or lower fat. It's really more about what's working for you. So don't think that, like, just because somebody said, oh, you need to, I had somebody on Instagram the other day who was like, you don't need carbs. And I'm like, okay, that's not true. I mean, technically you don't need anything other than water, and just enough food to keep your organs you could eat that off of bugs and berries if you really wanted to. So just don't worry about like, which one should I do? Play with it a little bit. Keep yourself satisfied. So that's one way that you can flex track. And the other is the plate method. And I'll have my clients use this when we're not tracking, or especially if they're going out, they're vacationing, things like that. Basically, you just look at your plate, right? And you just want to make sure that it's pretty balanced. You want a palm or bigger. Like I like kind of like stretch it out to the outside, like a little bit, that first knuckle of my fingers, right? Like that's what you want for a protein source. Is it chicken? Is it fish? Is it whatever protein source that you can get a hold of, right? Then you still want some starch, which is also going to be your palm size. That's going to be your rice, your bread, your sweet potatoes, like whatever, right? Then 2 palms of veggies and or fruit. That could be your greens, it could be a vegetable, it could be some fruit, whatever. And then a thumb of fat. And this is something that I do see quite a bit, where because people think like, oh, avocados are healthy, or nuts are healthy, right? And so then when I'm looking at their meal, they're adding extra fat. And it's like, okay, well, you're already eating pork, which is a higher fat meat, and then you added, some dressing, and then you added avocado, right? And so then that fat overtakes the plate. Keep in mind that when it comes to calories, for protein and carbs, there are 4 calories for every gram. When it comes to fat, there are 9 calories for every gram. So every little bit is going to up your calories substantially, which is why when you go out to eat and you may log that you ate 600 calories, you probably ate more like 11 to 1200, because there's butter, there's oils that you cannot see, that you haven't accounted for, that are upping your total calories. So that's the plate method. And then lastly, let's talk about meal timing. Now, this is what we are using for the challenge and why I wanted to include this. Both undereating and overeating are stress to your metabolic system. Undereating and overeating are both stress to the metabolic system. And here's what many women do. They get up, they're busy, they have things to do, and they're also trying to keep their calories down. So they have their cup of coffee, they have their slice of toast, and they're out the door and they're going. And they maybe consumed 100 calories, maybe, right? That's under eating. So you basically went all night with a fast, and then you started the day out the door. Here we go. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, with no calories coming in. That's stress your metabolic system. And then here comes lunch, and because you're trying to keep your calories low, you eat about 300 calories. Maybe a small amount of meat, maybe a half a sandwich, piece of fruit, right? Maybe a small salad, it's 400 calories, something like that. And that's your lunch, right? So it's still kind of a lower calorie. Then by the afternoon, all of a sudden you're just like, I feel like I just need to keep snacking, right? And so that's when you start snacking on chocolate and chips and things that are not healthy for you. And then by the time you hit dinner, it's like, I'm just so hungry, right? So then you go from having 100 calories at breakfast to like 1200 for dinner. Both of those things are stress to the system. So the reason that I want you eating frequently is that regular meals are going to help balance your blood sugar. So when you're not eating enough, your blood sugar dips. So if my blood sugar dips, so you guys remember we talked about insulin and cortisol, if blood sugar dips too low, cortisol comes in to push it up. So now my cortisol is high. And if my cortisol is high, then insulin is going to try and push it down. So insulin tries to push it back down. Well, cortisol doesn't like that, so then it pushes it back up. And then you get this all day long, which leaves you very, very tired and also craving a lot of food. So eating regularly keeps your blood sugar more even keeled, which is what we want. It's easier on your digestive system because you're less likely to overeat. When you put too much food in your system at once, that is stress on your digestive system, right? So now we have smaller meals spread throughout the day. Oops, hold on. First meal at 10 and lunch at 2. Yeah, I eat about every 3 hours. I eat 6 times a day, eat all day. Metabolic adaptation. So your metabolism will actually adapt to getting fed regularly. So over time, you do get a small uptick in the metabolism. Think about it. We're training that puppy, right? So we're teaching the metabolism. There's a relationship. Oh, hey, I'm going to feed you. I'm going to fuel you for whatever you need throughout the day. And then your metabolism goes, thank you. And it starts to burn. It goes, oh, let me burn that. Okay. And once you do that, and it usually only takes 3 to 5 days, where all of a sudden you're like, and I get this a lot, women will go, but I'm not hungry in the morning. And I'm like, that's because your metabolism isn't burning. It's in the toilet. That's not a good sign. A good sign is you get up and within an hour, you're like, oh, I need to eat something. I'm kind of hungry, right? That means that your metabolism is like ready to go. It's burning. That's what we want. So we want a good relationship where it goes, hey, I know you're going to feed me. I went ahead and I burned that off. So we want to eat frequently. And then I wanted to talk about intermittent fasting because I know you guys see 6 times a day my system would get clogged. It's actually, it takes some practice. It's why I started with 3 meals and 1 snack because that would seem overwhelming. And for some people, there's that balance too of just like the mental thought behind it of like, oh, I don't want to have to think about eating 6 times a day. I don't think about it. I eat kind of the same shit every day. And I've done it for 30 years. So there's no thought behind it. It's a matter of figuring out like what works for your body, right? So intermittent fasting. I know you guys see it. There's lots of people out there like, oh, women need to know the benefit of fasting. First of all, you understand how this works. What intermittent fasting, what the experts will tout is that it helps with blood sugar, okay? If you're not eating food, your blood sugar is going to drop. When your blood sugar drops, that means that insulin is going to stay low. That is beneficial because then insulin doesn't get stored around your midsection. That's the benefit. But here's the whole story. If your blood sugar drops and it drops too low, cortisol is going to come up and it's going to push it up. And now we're on the roller coaster. And this happens for midlife women all the time. Keep in mind that without eating that meal, you have also just caused stress to your metabolic system. Also, if you chose not to eat until noon, your blood sugar is low throughout the morning. The second you eat food, what do you think happens to your blood sugar? It goes up. That's just going to happen. When you eat food, your blood sugar is going to go up. But if we make the right choices, and we're not just like, oh, I have an 8-hour window, I got to eat whatever I can, right? It doesn't matter. You can still have that 8-hour window, and if you eat too many calories, you still will not lose weight, which is what a lot of people do. Intermittent fasting works well for people who have what we call a flexible metabolism. They're not in metabolic distress. They have a flexible metabolic system that when they throw things at it, it just goes to work to figuring it out. That might work for them. Typically, it's going to work better for men because men do not have the same stress reaction, stress sensitivity that women do, especially in midlife. So when you see this, a lot of times you'll see it being led by men because for many men, it is a decent strategy. It doesn't mean that it won't work for a woman in midlife. For some, it does. For most, it causes more stress than anything. And for the women that it does work, those women typically are already metabolically flexible. And most of the time they are not in perimenopause, they're already in menopause. And the reason that that's important to distinguish is that in perimenopause, your estrogen is still fluctuating all over the place and it causes a ton of stress in your system. When you're in menopause, yes, those hormones have dropped off, but they're not fluctuating and out of control anymore. They just are where they are, and your body has adapted to that. So you're not going to get quite as much of a stress response as if you were in perimenopause. Make sense? So that's the whole meal timing thing. Questions? Make sure I'm not missing anything. Does that make sense to everybody? Thoughts, Francesca?
You know, it's first of all, today was a day when I did the good thing, right? I had regular meals. I had proper food. This does not always happen because in my life, work has been number one. And it goes to I work in the arts. So, you know, creativity, it's like there it is. Go with it, you know. You can't stop now. And today I had the meat. I am First of all, I don't think I ate everything of it. I probably didn't, you know, eat all of it that I was supposed to eat, and I'm still full.
Mhm.
And I feel too full almost.
Mhm.
So is this something that will regulate itself, or is this because the body's like, oh my God, I'm getting food? Or what's going on?
Your body has adapted to less calories. And so and this is a good point, when you guys
Or
are low
fluctuating calories, I should say, right?
or fluctuating calories. And also keep in mind too, there's a difference between very nutrient dense foods and not nutrients dense foods. You can eat a lot of not nutrient dense foods. I don't want to call them bad food, but they're just not, they don't have any real nutrition to them. It's why I always laugh when people are like, I just can't eat anymore. I'm like, could you eat a cookie? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, right. Look, you could. Right. That's sometimes how we get people's calories up. Because when you're eating enough protein and fiber and fruits and veggies and you're getting all of that nutrition in, you are going to be so satiated that you're like, oh, can't. Right. So, especially for the sake of the challenge, I would say, don't like, yes, focus on protein, start to work it in, focus on fiber, like work those things in and get the frequency in, but don't worry about how many calories you're eating. When
Okay.
you're full, you stop.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
here, if you keep doing this, what you will notice is over time, your metabolism will adapt, it will learn to digest, and it's going to start asking for more.
I'm really, I know that this is like a sort of luxurious thought to say, but and I know that there are women out there who are moms and you know who do this all the time. They do both, like they cook for their children and eat and work. I cannot understand how the time I really wish I met somebody that loved to cook. I swear to God, I would do everything else. Everything else.
Mhm.
But the time that it took today to cook and then walk the dog and the feeding, it's overwhelming.
Mhm.
It's just very interesting.
So here's the thing, everybody's going to be different. I have clients that love cooking. I am not someone who loves cooking.
I love eating.
Yeah, yeah, right? Same Z's. I'm in that camp, right? So I don't enjoy cooking. So everything I do is like easy. I heat stuff up. Like if you guys are in the States, I use a company called Just Meats. They basically send you ethically farmed meats, right? They're packaged in 4 servings. They're already cooked. I literally throw them in a skillet and I put them over rice or in a tortilla or sweet potatoes or veggies or whatever, right? Like all of that. I will make rice once a week and keep it in the refrigerator. Sweet potatoes probably 3 times a month. I'll roast some sweet potatoes. And then when it comes to veggies, I'll typically roast them or I'll throw them and saute them in a pan. Outside of that, like everything is heated up and thrown together.
You in that sense, you're kind of a Lego eater. You kind of just put it together. Mhm.
I'm a master at throwing things in a bowl and calling it a meal. Where's my protein? Which starch am I going to go with? Which vegetable? Boom. And I just put it in a bowl, chop it up, and eat it. So you just have to figure out the things that work for you. You play with stuff, right? So like Alicia, she's like, I love cooking, meal prep on Sunday. Yeah, some people love cooking, and they'll have clients that are like, have you tried this? And you got to make this. And I'm like, that's cute. Thanks, but that's never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. I would rather go spend my free time outdoors or anything, anything
I mean,
else.
I do cook once in a while. I actually did one of the recipes that you had. I switched it up a little bit for the
Yeah,
one with salmon, which turned out pretty good, I have to say.
yeah.
But it's just wow. Well, I admire my mom's one of them. She could cook. The woman can cook.
Yeah, yeah, it's not me. Okay, so keep in mind, a lot of the things that I talked about today are just things that you can implement in. Don't try to be like, oh, I gotta start eating 150 grams of protein, and you're like eating all this food and you're not digesting it, and you're constipated, and you're like, I gained 5 pounds, Jen. I thought this was about increasing my metabolism. No, no, no. Like we're not concerned with all that. These are just little things that you're gonna start to work in while you're hitting the frequency. That
So
is
what
why
you
the
what you
challenge is
say, so what you're saying right now, focus on getting protein and focus on doing the regularity of it. Okay. All right, that
yeah.
makes sense.
And how much protein? Who cares right now? The biggest check mark is the frequency. Because most of the women who come to me are skipping breakfast or they nibble on something. It never fails. When I look at a food log, it's like a piece of toast and they're out the door, right? So it's like, no, I need you to like eat. We need to eat. You need to teach your body you're going to fuel it, because this is about working with your metabolism. So we teach the metabolism that we're going to feed it.